Hi there, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast.
For 15 years now, we've been proudly helping breeders promote hundreds of thousands of pedigree livestock with our easy-to-use animal management-driven website software.
And let's not forget about Hired Hand Live, where over $1 million worth of livestock is sold online each year.
We're excited to bring you market trends, sales data, advice from your fellow breeders, and stories from the ranch.
Our software makes managing your website and your animals a breeze, so you can focus on what you love.
So let us handle your digital chores while you tune in to another episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Welcome to this episode of From the Pasture with Hired Hand. Today we're visiting the beautiful pastures of I M Bar Longhorns in Bighorn, Wyoming, home to a beautiful herd of registered Texas Longhorns. Owned by Kris Johnson, this ranch is dedicated to having production towards progression. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kris.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start here. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name's Kris Johnson. I am the Region 16 Director for the TLBAA in Longhorn Division C. I also am the Wyoming Longhorn Association President. I also serve on the World Show Committee for the TLBAA. And then along with that, I am the Superintendent for the Nile Stock Show in Billings, Montana for the Longhorn Division.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I didn't really realize it was until I started listing it out, getting in order for this. And yeah, it is a lot, but I enjoy doing it, so it's not too bad.
Well, tell me a little bit about how you got started in Longhorns and how that kind of progressed to being involved in the Longhorn community in all these different ways.
In 1995, my dad bought some Longhorns just because he had some land and he wanted something that was a little different, something more fun to look at. And so he bought some, crossbred Longhorn Coriani, whatever, from a sale, and then had those for about 2 or 3 years. And he decided, he's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So then in, a few years later, he got into his first registered Texas Longhorns. And so I was just kind of born into it, luckily. Since then, I wouldn't say all the way taken over, but for the most part taken over I M Bar Longhorns and all the marketing and, going to shows and everything. I do all that. My dad still has a few head, still has a few big steers. He likes those, and he'll go to a few shows once in a while. But for the most part, I have taken over I M Bar Longhorns. But yeah, I just kind of got lucky and just kind of fell into it, I guess.
So how many head are you up to now that you've kind of taken everything over?
We run about 20 mama cows, kind of have a rotation between 2 herd sires, and then we have usually about 8 to 10 big steers, probably close to 30, 35 head.
So and on what point in your journey did you start to get involved with a lot of the associations and the events that you mentioned?
So growing up all through high school, I showed, through the TLBT, and then I went off to college and I did livestock judging down in Texas at Clarendon College at first, and then went on to Texas Tech. So I spent 5 years in Texas and then moved back home. And it was actually a guy named Kenny Richardson. He's passed now. But he had asked me, he said, hey, because he was the sitting, World Show Committee member for our region at that time. And he said, hey, my time's coming up. We were thinking about people who we thought we would want to move forward with. And he said, your name came up, and I hadn't really thought about it until then. So I was like, yeah, heck, you can throw my name in the hat. We'll see what happens. And I ended up getting that position. And I'm actually, I think I'm on my second term, or I'm on my second 3-year term with them. And I think I have 2 years left of this current term. And then from that, I had the opportunity to become the Wyoming Longhorn Association President. So I took that as well. And then the board of director position, again, that kind of, somebody had told me about it, and I said, yeah, I'll throw my name in the hat, and again, we'll see what happens. And I was lucky enough to get that position as well. But yeah, so I've just kind of been riding with the flow, and this is where I'm at now.
So with some of those kind of elected positions, are you in charge of just your state? Are you responsible for a certain region?
So the Wyoming Longhorn Association that I'm president of, that is just, for the Wyoming Longhorn Association. It's not necessarily only the state of Wyoming. And we have association members from Montana, Colorado, South Dakota, Nebraska, Texas, and I think Oklahoma. The main thing that we do is we put on Wyoming State Fair every year. So we put on a TLBAA qualifying show. And then, the board of directors position, that is a region that I'm, not, I guess, in charge of. It is, Division C. It's like Montana, Wyoming, New Mexico, Oklahoma, I believe. I should know, but I don't. So that's, just kind of our division. And I sit in on board of directors meetings. And then, if somebody has some questions, in our region that, they don't know the answer to, they can come to me and I can kind of help with that or give direction where, people are wanting to go and what they're wanting to do. But yeah, other than that, I think I learned just as much from other people as they learned from me. So,
well, what would be something that you learned, whether it be before you got on these committees or from being on these committees? What would you say is one thing you're taking away with you?
One thing that I've learned is that, there's a lot of passion in this industry, but I think at the end of the day, a Longhorn is just such a unique breed and they have different characteristics. And at the end of the day, as long as you're breeding for what makes you happy, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Well, with being in Wyoming, I feel like maybe it's because of Yellowstone, maybe it's always been that way, but I feel like what you do is probably very romanticized, right? Like everyone thinks of Wyoming, Montana, that part of the country, and thinks of the wide open spaces and, the beautiful Texas Longhorns. But I have a feeling that it's probably more work, if not anything, than what that maybe comes off as. So talk to me a little bit about just the difference of being where you're at in your part of the country versus maybe a breeder in Texas, and how that presents its own challenges and also benefits for you.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is, whether you're buying or selling cattle, you always have to incorporate in transportation. I do go down to Texas usually twice, sometimes 3 times a year, pulling a trailer there and back. One is for the World Show, and then another is for Fort Worth Stock Show, just because that's when our general membership meeting is. And then, some other times if I buy something in a sale or sell something to somebody and help them with transportation that way, I'll go down there. But I think that that's the biggest challenge is, we're, quite a ways away from, a lot of breeders. Another thing with that is we don't have as many opportunities up here, to go to events. We hit, I think, 8 shows every year. I know families, that live down in Texas that, they go to, a show, if not 2 every weekend. So that's kind of challenging. But at the same time that it is challenging, I think it kind of provides me with, some opportunities that are, maybe somebody in Texas doesn't get that opportunity. In the state of Wyoming, there's not, many registered Longhorn herds. If somebody wants a registered Longhorn, there's a pretty good chance that, I have a good opportunity to make that sale. And if I don't have something that they have, I have no problem passing it off to, somebody else that's in our area. That is one of the good things about being the Wyoming Longhorn Association president, is that I know about everybody that's in the state that has Longhorns or is associated with them. So if I end up not having something that a buyer is looking for, I can usually point them in the right direction or mention some names that, might have something like that. So at the same time that it is difficult because, we're farther away from a lot of events and a lot of breeders, at the same time, we can kind of use that to our advantage almost. So.
Do you have any stories that you can share with us about maybe some new breeders in your part of the country that you've gotten more heavily involved, whether it be that they purchased their first animal from you or, came to you wanting to know more about the association and are now maybe having a registered herd instead of non?
Yeah, one family that I can think of is the Deweys from Otto, Wyoming, Jesse and Amber Dewey. They came to me, I guess, about three years ago, probably. And I had sold a bull to them and a bull and a cow to them. And then, they started going to shows. And so we kind of traveled together, and then they've traveled with me to the World Show down in Texas for the last 2 years, kind of bought and sold cattle. And it's really exciting to see, more and more breeders up this way, and especially somebody that's excited enough about it to, travel to different shows and spend the money to go down the road and hotels and food and everything else. And something cool that's about them is that they also have 4 kids. And so their 4 kids are very heavily involved in it as well. They do well in the TLBAA shows. And so, that's, I guess, one family that I can think of off the top of my head and I didn't sell them their first Longhorns, but some of their first. So that's pretty cool to think about.
That's very neat. Well, at the time that you and I are recording this podcast, here in the Midwest and in your part of the country too, we're both kind of getting ready for winter, for that snow that's bound to happen. Maybe it already has in your world. But talk to me a little bit about just the difference with that as well. So what you have to do to winter your herd.
Sure. So the main thing a couple main things that we try to do is have ample feed available. And then along with that, give them kind of a shelter. We don't have anything really too fancy. We have a big lean-to that they can get in under. And then, when we are calving in, March, April, May, I mean, some of the most snow we get is usually in April and May, and it's that wet, heavy spring snow. And so we do all of our calving here at the house. But then in the summertime, we kind of pasture everything away from here during the winter, just because it's easier to feed and kind of monitor the herd a little more. We do bring everything home in the wintertime. But as long as you keep ample feed in front of them, we try to feed between 30 and 35 pounds of hay a day per head. As long as you do that and they have a place to kind of get in out of the weather, they're a pretty hardy animal. Another thing, buying some cows from the southern region of the United States, it's hard for me to buy. If I do get cows from down south, I try to bring them up before about the month of July. That kind of gives them some time to, kind of build up their tolerance and get a bit of a winter coat, because, there's years that, we have 1 to 2 foot of snow in the end of September. So you never really know when it's coming, but it is. But that is another thing that I try to do is if I am bringing up any animals from down south, I try to do it in the earlier part of the summer, and that gives them just a little bit more time to, kind of get climatized. But again, as you know, it's a pretty hardy breed. And so they do well up here. So.
And now let's hear from our advertisers.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink, we're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, long horns, and docile temperaments. But it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
Are you a new Longhorn breeder eager to educate yourself on market trends and sale prices? Stay in the loop with our text messages. Get the latest updates, events, and insider tips on all things Longhorns delivered straight to your phone.
Stay informed by texting website to 888-700-8131, then reply with Longhorns. That's website to 888-700-8131. Sign up today and take your breeding program to the next level.
So if we have some folks listening who maybe don't have any animals yet, but they have the land or the want to, kind of get into some type of cattle, what would be your reasoning or your advice to suggest Texas Longhorns to them for your part of the country and maybe what they're looking for to get from their land?
Again, I think the hardiness is a huge selling point for these cows. They're low maintenance, maybe somebody that hasn't been ranching or been around cattle or anything for their, somebody who didn't grow up in it but wants to get into it now. It's a pretty easy breed to get involved with. Again, just kind of lower maintenance, easier to maintain. You're not going to be pulling calves in the spring just because of the low birth weights. Along with that, there's just so many positives that Longhorns bring to the table that they're pretty easy to recommend as a breed to get started with, and they're just cool to look at anyways.
Well, talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned that you grew up showing in the TLBT, as did I, and I feel like those of us that did, we have really fond memories, but also it obviously shaped us into the people we are today. What would your advice be to kids who are wanting to get started, but maybe don't know where to start? Maybe their parents don't know where to, go to turn to find their first Longhorn, or maybe they're intimidated by halter breaking or having to go to Texas for those stuff. What would your advice be there?
Sure. I think the best advice is find somebody that does it right now and talk to them. I've never talked to a breeder and went up and asked them questions and, they kind of give me the shoulder. They always want to help you. The more the merrier, I think, and I think a lot of other breeders feel the same way. But go to events, go to a show and talk to the breeders that have Longhorns there. And, I know it might be kind of intimidating, but it's just something that you kind of got to do. And, anything I think in this world that's worth doing is probably going to be a little bit intimidating to begin with anyways. So.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears back to your program here a little bit. So I know you inherited it essentially, but where did I M Bar come from? Where did you come up with that name, or your family come up with that name?
So I M Bar was actually my great-grandfather's brand. It's been registered with the state of Wyoming since 1927. So we're coming up on 100 years.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's pretty cool. The I M Bar is, so my great-grandfather's name was Ivan McCann. So that's where the I M comes from. And then the bar underneath it, I think, was kind of something that was popular in the times of those brands. When I was little, I always wanted to, have my own brand and design my own brand and, have something different because I didn't know what I M Bar even was. But then the older I get, the cooler it becomes to me that, that brand has been in my family for 4 generations now. That's kind of where the I M Bar comes from.
Well, I have a feeling my next question is maybe something you came up with when you took over the marketing. But the tagline on your website is production towards progression. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I came up with that just throughout the day. I'd think of something and write it down in my notes. And I bet you I had 3 or 4 pages of notes that, kind of a tagline that I wanted. Looking at other websites, like Ross Suber, for example, jeans that make you look good. I think that's cool. And then like Ross Ohlendorf, he has the pretty and productive cattle. So just something that was kind of unique and different. And I had thought of, like I said, I filled my notes section on my phone a few times and kind of narrowed it down to about 3. And I ended up liking production towards progression the most. So that's kind of what I went with. And yeah, no particular reason why I came up with it.
Well, let's talk about the specific animals in your herd. So who are a few females, or maybe it's a herd sire that you want to point out? Who are some of those animals and those genetics that are progressing you, are taking you towards kind of that goal you allude to?
Sure. I guess at least my favorite female that we have is a cow named Photo Finish. She's a PCC Rimrock son or daughter, I guess. And then she is about 86 the last time I measured her. She's still kind of a younger cow. I'm hoping that she'll cross that 90-inch mark here in the next couple years. But she really, really produces well for us. Then a bull that we have, which was actually my first, kind of big time purchase, after I got out of college and moved back home. I was looking at kind of our herd and where I was wanting to go with it, and, kind of did a little bit of shopping and looking at hired hand websites. And I ended up buying a bull named HL Bullwhip, which was bred by Hudson, and I bought him from Jim O'Connor, but he's really progressed our herd a lot. We still have him, and we have quite a few of his daughters in the herd, and he's a big tricolored bull, and he really passes on the color to his heifers. And he won the Horn Showcase for Total Horn, I think 3 years in a row, and then Daryl Dickinson's bull Flair Galore got him, and we haven't brought him back since. But yeah, so he really helped move us forward. Another bull that we have that I'm excited about is a GLR Cut and Zoom. It's a cut and dried son, and he's out of a cow that is out of Tsunami 2, I believe, from the Gilliland Ranch. But again, he's kind of a tricolored bull, and he wasn't entered in the Horn Showcase, but if he would have been when he was a yearling, I think he would have won it if my math is correct, or if I'm correct in the class that he would have been in. But yeah, I think that he's going to really do a lot of things for our herd. And what's kind of cool about him is so that Tsunami 2 bull is out of Pacific Mermaid, and Pacific Mermaid, as I'm sure most everybody knows, is one of the best producing cows that the breed has ever seen, bred by Bob Larson out there in Oregon. But so her mom, whose name was Cranberry Wine, actually came from our ranch. We had sold her to a guy in Wyoming, and then he ended up selling it to Bob Larson out there on the West Coast. And so it's kind of a full circle moment. It's cool to get some of those genetics back in our herd. But yeah, so I was excited about that. And I think that he's going to be something that, is really going to, again, continue to help us progress and move forward. And so, yeah, I guess those are 3 that I'm excited about. And then we have, like I said, a couple big steers. We have a steer that is about 115 tip to tip. And in 2021, he was the world grand champion at the world show. So that was cool to have him in the pasture. We've retired him now, and he just hangs out in the foothills of Bighorn, Wyoming now. So I guess cool. He's not going to pass on too many genetics, but he's still one that I like quite a bit.
You still have to have a few of those, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, ask Joe.
There you go. Well, let's talk a little bit more. So I did not know this story beforehand. So now I want to know more about it. So is there a story behind selling Pacific Mermaid's dam that like I'm sure you kind of wanted to kick yourself there when that cow was let go from your program?
So I was 12, I think, at the time, and we just had a knockout year for heifers for whatever reason. We had 7 or 8. We usually try to keep 1 or 2 replacement heifers every year, but we had 7 or 8 that were just solid. just good heifers. And I was kind of getting more heavily involved in, the TLBT side of things. So kind of show a different kind of cow than what wins the Horn Showcase, as you and everybody else knows. So my dad was really trying to push getting some more of those showier type cows. And I don't know if you remember him, but do you know who Tom Clausen was with Hawkeye Longhorns?
Yes, I made many trips down to Texas with Tom and Bob.
Yeah. So they had Hawkeye Longhorns, and that guy that lived in Wyoming, he had bought a couple of Tom's cows kind of when they got out of it and kind of retired from everything. And, my dad, really, really wanted a few of those cows from him, and he didn't want to give them up. And so my dad actually ended up trading, I think it was 3 heifers to, 1 heifer that I ended up getting. And then we ended up buying her mom a little later on down the line. And I remember, at 12 years old, I was so infuriated with my dad. I was so mad. And, thinking back about it now, it's silly for me to be mad at him because he was doing it literally for me to be able to do better in the show ring. But yeah, so that's how we ended up, not necessarily selling, but trading that cow away, and then did some business with Bob out there. And that cow just ended up going out to Oregon, and he AI'd her with Tejas Star. And the rest is history. It, created one of the best producing cows there ever was. But so that's how we ended up not having her anymore. But at the same time that, it stinks to let ones like that go, it's also good. There's benefits from it. At the end of the day, that cow still had an I M bar on her left hip, and that female that we ended up trading for, she went on to be a world champion, later on down the line. And at the end of the day, it all worked out. But yeah, it's silly for me to think about it now because I was so upset with my dad. But everything kind of happens. Everything happens for a reason. So
exactly, and I love that you acknowledge this kind of a full circle moment with you now having a potential herd sire.
Yeah,
at your place. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's very cool.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Looking for top quality Longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for Longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, Longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
When it comes to buying and selling livestock, trust is everything. At Hired Hand Live, we have a platform that breeders and buyers rely on, whether participating in a live auction, an internet-only event, or hosting their own online auction. Our secure, user-friendly system ensures that your bid counts, and every transaction is backed by our commitment to integrity.
Whether you're a part of a consignment sale or planning your own internet auction, Hired Hand Live connects breeders and buyers live and online. Discover why breeders trust us with their livestock auctions. Visit hiredhandlive.com today.
Hey, if you love From the Pasture with Hired Hand, why not go check out my podcast, The Big Iron Podcast with Andrew Shigori, where we dive into the world of registered Texas Longhorns and what it means to be an agriculture entrepreneur in the modern world, with a little southern flair, of course. Find the Big Iron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Here, the folks you've mentioned so far have been Ross Duber, Ross Ohlendorf, Jim O'Connor, the Clausens. Is there anyone else that, you would say helped you get started or has been very valuable to kind of your growth along the way?
So when we very first got started, Owen McGill and Johnny Wilson down there in Wheatland, Wyoming, we bought, or not we, I was, I think about 2 years old, but my dad bought, his first registered stuff from them. So they really helped us get started and get involved. But I think just, through the TLBT, just going and meeting people, there's countless people that, have helped us along the way. And I wouldn't even want to start, naming some of them because I know I'd forget people and then be upset with myself. So not really, too many people in particular, but just, I guess, everybody as a group to, kind of welcome the little kid that didn't know too much about showing from Wyoming, down in Texas. And, I had no business being in some of those classes with some of those guys. And, but, it wasn't any different to them. And, again, then when we got a few cows from Tom Clausen's original herd, obviously we started doing a little better in the show ring, and it just kind of built after that. And so, yeah, there's, again, not really too many people in particular I could thank. I try to talk to as many people as I can, and just kind of gain as much information as I can to move forward. So.
Well, let's circle back to your steer program for a little bit. I'm curious if there's anything you want to elaborate on with those, but also I'm guessing that because you have a steer program, perhaps you also have a lean beef program.
I do.
And I'm wondering how that does in that part of the country.
Yeah, so like I said, we have usually about 8 to 10 big steers. I guess last February, I started kind of selling lean beef at a local farmer's market that we have here. And when I very first started, I had 3 steers that I fed out, finished on crack corn for the last 100 days. And I had to go out and buy freezers. And after I unloaded all of it, I looked at it and I said, what the heck am I doing? There's no way I'm going to be able to sell all this meat. And so I started going to a few farmers markets. There's actually one here in Sheridan, Wyoming. It's been life-changing for us and our program. Everybody is going to have bull or steer calves every year. Unless you hit AI with all heifer sexed or something, but still, even then you end up with one once in a while. But I needed a place to go with our excess steer calves. Ropers don't want to pay anything for them. They're not, well, now they are, but at the time they weren't worth much at the sale barn. I needed a different outlet, and I kind of looked into that and kept a few steers back, in order to feed. And so did that, and then ended up, selling the beef, and it went better than I thought. And now I'm butchering 2 to 3 steers a month, and I'm selling out of beef faster than I can raise it. So yeah, to say that it's went well would be an understatement.
How much of that do you think is maybe the marketing you've done behind it, or do you truly just think it's the desire for folks to know like where their food is coming from, that it's a healthy product, all of that?
I think that's a big part of it, and getting out and talking to people. At that farmer's market, I talk to probably 80 to 100 people a day. It's a lot easier to sell something to somebody that you can kind of interact with and talk to. And I think that, again, that farmer's market has been huge for us in our program. I don't really do too much marketing as it is, just because I have a hard time meeting the quota that I am at right now anyways. So maybe, in the future, instead of 2 to 3 steers a month, it'll be 5 to 6 or 8 to 10. And then at that time, I'll be able to kind of market it a little bit more. And again, hopefully just kind of continue to grow the meat portion of it.
So have you progressed at all from selling individual packages at a farmer's market to folks being able to pre-order like a quarter or a whole ahead of time?
Yeah, so I hadn't really thought about the quarter halves or wholes. I was just, again, going to, kind of sell the individual packages. And then I had a few people ask me about it. And so I kind of crunched some numbers and saw, what I thought I would need for them in order to still make some money on the deal, and kind of started giving prices on that. And again, it's, taken off like crazy. But I think that, like you were saying, just knowing where your beef comes from, and there's so many, between it being the healthiest beef that you can buy. I mean, there's just so many positives to it. I mean, essentially sells itself. And so, yeah, we do offer quarter, halves, and wholes. You know, in the future, I would like to get away from the quarters just because everybody obviously wants, you know, a lot of ribeyes and a lot of tenderloins and a lot of roasts. And, you know, those are all the prime cuts of the beef, obviously. So that's a little challenging. But yeah, you know, going forward, I'd still like to offer halves and wholes. And then again, just keep selling the individual packages and kind of go from there.
Well, let's do some rapid fire questions here if you're up for it. That sound good?
Sure.
All right. So when you're walking around, driving around, not sure which you prefer your pasture, what's kind of your favorite food to have?
I really like pistachios or sunflower seeds.
I've not heard pistachios before. We've had a few others say sunflower seeds. I think we say pumpkin seeds.
Oh, yeah, just because it's the time of the year. Who eats pumpkin seeds in March?
So are your pistachios, do you buy the already unshelled, or do you buy them in the shell and have to do all that? Is it like a calming thing?
Nah, I buy the unshelled ones. I don't have enough patience to crack them all.
What's your favorite farm tool? Favorite ranch tool?
I would have to say probably the Joe Shoot. It's definitely one that I use the most. I know that.
How long have you had your Joe Shoot?
Since probably 4 years, I think.
So was it a big game changer when you got it, or just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was. And I had talked to Joe a few times and was going to, you know, try to get one, seeing what the difference was between that or a Bry or a PNC shoot. And, you know, really liked the design of the Joe Shoot. And I actually ended up not even getting it from Joe, but I got it from, you know, another guy. He had some cows up in Montana, and he had bought like Wreck and Sew from Daryl Dickinson, you know, another few cows from, you know, some different people, and he had a pretty good little herd going. And I actually bought a steer calf from him that, you know, I bought him because he was cool colored, and he ended up, you know, turning into a heck of a good steer for us. But when I went up there to pick up that steer, I asked him, I was like, "Do you like your Joe Shoot?" And he goes, "To tell you the truth, I just got it." He said, "Do you want to run one through it and see how it works?" I said, "Shoot, yeah." And so we actually ended up running Wreck and Sew through it, and measuring him, and, you know, it worked good, and I liked it. And I was like, all right, well, my mind's made up. And, you know, when I got home, I had planned to, you know, tell Joe, like, "Hey, put me on the list. I want one, you know, let's kind of move forward with this." And just got busy doing something else and didn't really think, you know, too much about it. And then about 6 months later, that guy, he called me. He said, "Hey, I sold my cows. The place that they had sold." He's like, "Do you want this Joe Shoot?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess it depends on what you want for it." And so he told me a price, and it was way under what I thought he was going to say. So I said, "Heck yeah." I said, "I'll be up there this weekend to pick it up." And so that's how I actually ended up getting that one. But, you know, at the time that I had bought it, I think the only animal that he said it ever went through it was Wreck and Sew that day when I was up there about 6 months prior. So, I mean, it was brand new, but it was a good deal, and I got lucky on it. So.
Nice. Well, I'm not sure about this next question, so you might be too young to remember. Do you remember the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
I do.
Did you ever used to watch that show? Okay. So
yeah,
there was a lifeline when you played that show. So if you had to have a Longhorn lifeline, who would you call? Who would your one phone call be?
That's a hard one.
It is, because there can only be one answer.
I know.
Hard, right?
I know.
You want to pass that one? I think in the game show they let you pick one.
It would kind of depend on what the situation was. Yeah, I don't know. I might have to phone a friend in order to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you pass that one. That means you can't pass on any of these other ones.
I won't pass another one.
What would be one word to describe your herd?
Growing.
Is Sheridan your dream ranch location, or is there somewhere else you aspire to be?
I assume that I'll probably be back in Texas one day. I really, really enjoyed my time down there. And again, you know, you're so close to so many things, you know, with Texas Longhorns, but at the end of the day, I love where I'm at right now. We're right at the base of the Bighorn Mountains, and yeah, for right now, this is where I need to be. You know, maybe a little later on in life, when I get tired of all the snow, maybe I'll head down south. So. What about your all-time favorite Longhorn, dead or alive? I loved Tejas Star. I loved that bull. I loved what he produced, but I would say it'd probably be him, to be honest with you.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your website and your marketing. So is there one feature or one thing that kind of made your decision to switch over and have a hired hand website?
Just the accessibility of it. It's easy to maneuver, you know, when you're looking at pedigrees. I mean, what's easier than looking at pictures, you know? I had always kind of wanted a website, didn't know what design to use or didn't know where to go with it, didn't know, you know, anything really. You know, I really, really enjoy pedigrees, seeing pedigrees. And after looking at, you know, hired hand designed websites for 3 or 4 years, I said, what the heck? I said, it's about time. I need to get one. And I talked with a few people about it, and they had told me, they're like, yeah, well, once you get set up monthly to monthly, it's not too bad, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's true. And the lady that I was talking to, she was like, yeah. And I sell, you know, cows off of it because of it. And she said, you sell one cow, you know, it pays for itself. And I was like, yeah, well, you know, that is true. You know, ended up getting the website. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I ended up with one.
Well, now that you've had your site for a while, is there a feature on the back end when you're making updates on your own that you enjoy or that you're excited about?
I like that you can, you know, enter the horn measurements for the whole herd at one time. It's a heck of a lot easier than clicking in and out of each specific animal and then finding them on the list. And because, you know, we work our cows about twice a year. So I'll usually update measurements about once a year every fall when we bring them home. But that makes it super, super easy. The purchasing feature on them, you know, where you have something priced and, you know, everything has a price. So I do have everything in our herd priced, but there's sometimes cows that, you know, I wasn't even looking to sell. I just had a price on there just because, and because it is for sale on, you know, hired hand website, other people can access that and, you know that. And, you know, I've made sales because of that specific reason. Again, it wasn't, you know, one that I was marketing, one that I was trying to sell or move. It just, you know, kind of happened to be that way. And I guess I really like that feature as well.
Have you participated in any of the hired hand live auctions?
I have. I actually just got a cow out of it's a gambler daughter from Colorado. I think she's 91 inches as a 7-year-old. I actually just bought her in the October sale. And then a few months ago, I bought a bull calf out of a herd dispersal sale. Yeah, once in a while, I you know, put a bid in there. And one thing that I think is pretty cool is that when Bucklehead sold, you know, a few years ago, at one time I had the winning bid on him. I didn't end up winning him, but at one time, whenever I show a picture or something to somebody and I'm like, hey, this is the longest horn steer in the world. And at one time I was leading, you know, I had the leading bid on him at one time. So yeah, I use it occasionally. And
So you mentioned you purchased one from our monthly sale. So just for our listeners, I'll explain that a little bit. So anyone who has a website with us, they are allowed to submit one animal per month into our monthly sale. We don't take a consignment fee or a commission. And then you, as the consigner, the submitter, can set your starting bid, your reserve, and your buy now price. So it's just another benefit to kind of make sure that your Hired Hand site pays for itself, and you can cover that monthly fee and everything. So have you ever submitted one for a monthly sale, or have you only purchased from our monthly sale, Kris?
I submitted one to the July sale, I believe. It was a big steer that we had, but I do plan on using it in the future. I just haven't used it to, its ability yet. So you're gonna give me like a month off prescription or something for that promo I just cut for you, or what?
I'll think about it.
Fair enough.
Well, I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. We talked a lot about the associations you're involved with, your breeding program, your websites and your marketing, your beef program. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to dig into a little bit deeper?
No, I think that it about answered everything on my end.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on From the Pasture with Hired Hand. We hope our listeners enjoyed this visit with I M Bar Longhorns and learned something about the world of Texas Longhorns. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. You can always explore more stories from the pasture by visiting our website or following us as well as I M Bar on social media. And until next time, remember to appreciate the pastures that you roam and the traditions that make them special.